I should establish here and now that I didn't really like Dying Light 1 all too much. I can appreciate its gameplay ideas. The ability to climb to the extent you can was very powerful, along with engaging with nighttime. But I do think that the story is just hype moments and aura, and because of that, a lot of things that are supposed to be taken seriously, I just can't help but laugh at. Now, in the case of Dying Light 2, I adore the strides it takes to push its parkour mechanics, its open world, and story ideas. I can recognize how those ideas aren't that consistently interesting or fleshed out, especially in compared to the first game. And it's no secret that a lot of the game's developers and creatives left during the game's development, and of course the ideas they had with them. From my understanding, not many people consider Dying Light 2 to be a bad game, but just not as good as Dying Light 1. I can respect and acknowledge that Dying Light 2 didn't successfully leave a lasting impression in compared to Dying Light 1. It seemingly left a sour taste within the core of the community, so it was interesting to me when they announced that the second DLC that was planned for Dying Light 2 would become its own standalone title, The Beast. And it's been clear throughout the marketing and the game itself that Techland is out to prove themselves to the fans and say, yes, we still got it. And the start of that statement is strong in this intro. It has been 10 years since we last played as Kyle Crane, so we are brought up to speed with narration from the man himself in the first minute. Ever since the ending of the following DLC, which the canon ending is now confirmed to be Take the Vials ending, he has been captured and brought to a facility and endured years of torture. He has since then become something more than a man. The experiments left him weak and made him lose his will to live. However, if he can do one thing, it would be to go after the very man that put him in this lab. The game takes a very gradual build up for this intro. We see two people attempting to break out Crane and fail. We learn soon later that one of them is seemingly better than Kyle himself in terms of potential, labeled as Subject Beta by the Baron, the person who runs his operation. And I didn't even realize it was him because his voice actor doesn't sound as cool as he did in the trailers, which is very disappointing, but that's a whole other conversation. Eventually, Subject Beta breaks out, and that gives Kyle his window to escape. Given the fact that Kyle has been experimented on, he feels incredibly weak and can't even stand, so we have to crawl. We hear a radio, and with that, there is a person on the other side. Her name is Olivia, and she's helping us out of here. No time to get to know her, given the fact that we have a chance to escape. The game very effectively puts you in this weakened state as Kyle. We have to slowly crawl through vents to get around the facility, eventually finding some adrenaline, which allows us to get on our feet, but we don't feel fully confident yet. The infected can be heard through the other side of the doors. It's here where the game teaches the basics of combat, more specifically allowing you to feel the brutality of it. I see a lot of people praise this game's combat, but don't realize 85% of it is just from improvements that Techland made from Dying Light 2 over the last 3 years. With, of course, some subtle improvements to make things more physical and have more detail. We can see bruises and blood along Crane's arms and hands as we punch enemies, which help exemplify the physicality of it all. Playing on brutal difficulty, you feel how punishing stamina usage is, as taking on 2 enemies can drain Crane's stamina very quickly, and it takes a good moment to recover fully, which is why tools like UV flashlights is very useful, but we'll get into that later. Because of how ineffective the game makes you feel at fighting multiple enemies early on, it pushes stealth, which hasn't changed much from 2, but with better layout and level design, its implementation feels very meaningful here. We eventually have to go through cells of infected, using a trusty pipe we grabbed and fight through multiple zombies. We reach a lift to escape, but we are forced to fight more of them as Olivia tries to open it for us. We get overwhelmed quickly, and through that adrenaline rush, Kyle snaps and is able to tear through zombies with satisfying ease. Each punch makes you feel powerful, along with the gore and finishers as a nice cherry on top. And in the end, we are able to let that rush out, as we are able to escape the facility. The doors are shutting down, forcing us to run to our freedom, and Kyle barely makes it through, finally free at last. Put in the title drop. Once we are out, we are greeted with another radio call from Olivia. We'll learn we are in Europe, in a small rural area by the Alps, Castor Woods, which is a very nice blend of everything Techland has pushed for the past decade. Dying Light has been a franchise. The first notable section being Old Town, being the most familiar while also the most impressive location in terms of urban environment I feel in the franchise, with the verticality of buildings, the detail of the interior, while also keeping parkour options fresh and interesting. I'll talk more about each gameplay environment as the game opens up to avoid front-loading information, as we have to establish a safe zone so we can meet Olivia. Similar setup to previous games of clearing the area of enemies and turning on the power. Just the scale of it feels a lot better here, as every safe zone you can find has a unique layout, which in turn makes exploring more engaging. It's also here where it's noticeable that the game takes interesting twists not just in gameplay, but also in presentation. It isn't the first time we've actually seen fully fledged cutscenes, but it's just the fact that we are not in first person. It actually does allow for the player to appreciate subtler things that we wouldn't see in the first person mode, like the grimaces on Kyle's face as he grapples with the memories of being tortured. It also helps when we see Kyle interacting with other characters as well, especially when we first meet Olivia. The dialogue doesn't waste time with what it's trying to do. Olivia wants to get out of here and escape from the Baron, as she herself was under slave labor in the lab, while Kyle himself is solely out for revenge. Olivia makes the point that Kyle needs weapons, supplies, allies, and most importantly, to get stronger. Enter Chimeras, boss battles that we will find throughout the main story. These are essentially special infected that the Baron was experimenting on. Once we kill them, it will help Kyle get stronger and unlock new abilities to help hone his beast powers. The boss battles themselves are quite nice, given the structure that is Dying Light, as it's hard to really go into deep criticism about balancing when the game can be played with 4 players with widely different power levels. The boss fights themselves are mainly more powerful variants of already established enemy archetypes, the first one having this emphasis on charging and swinging with his bony arm. There are usually 2 phases in these fights. The second phase pushing the boss to be more aggressive, forcing the player to adapt due to different attack patterns. Along with that, it will call zombies in as well, which adds a new factor to engage with. On its own, it may seem like a bloated concept to throw zombies in, but with the beast mode, killing zombies becomes more meaningful, as doing more damage to enemies charges the beast meter all the way. And once it's full, Kyle can't control when the beast is free. Why did I write that? So you as a player have to be mindful when you reach a full beast meter, so you can take full advantage of it. As you kill more chimeras, more skills will unlock, like being able to throw objects or running faster while in beast mode. You have your basic form of progression as well. There is different skill tree paths to follow, and you have a good amount of the advanced parkour skills from Dying Light 2 already at your disposal. The game's progression is pretty simple. We go to Old Town and help the people there, and then we may do another mission that may pertain to us fighting a chimera and doing a boss fight. The structure on its own is very boring, especially when it's a character-driven revenge plot that we are supposed to be invested in. The structure here is just go here and do this thing, or go here and kill this thing. It isn't really Crane like going on his journey. It's the Crane doing things for people to help build an army against the Baron, or told to do things so he can get stronger. Like I said, it's boring on its own, conceptually. However, the gameplay makes up for it in a lot of ways. A lot of the things people say are improvements are from Dying Light 2, which once again are improvements that they made over the 3 years of updates. That Techland dedicated to player feedback like guns, combat, nighttime, parkour. All the things I see people praise mainly from a gameplay perspective are things that are already presented in Dying Light 2. However, it isn't just a simple case of Techland taking these things from Dying Light and throwing them onto the beast. They're recontextualized in big and small ways to make the experience better. Guns were added in Dying Light 2, but can be gained solely through a exclusive vendor that can be found in a side quest. In the beast, they're smartly placed within the loophole via exploration in certain enemy types. Having tools like guns well integrated into the game's progression really adds more variety and choices to how a player can engage with what the game has to offer. Dying Light was never truly praised for its story, but for how it pushed the gameplay sandbox and how that made you feel. That sandbox honestly has never been better than the beast, with some questionable caveats. I find the loot economy to be poorly balanced. The main source of gathering loot is done in a couple of different ways. Of course, from just gathering resources from the open world. When you explore people's homes, you loot bodies, but the game has the return of a couple of things from Dying Light 2 in this regard. Convoys and dark zones. And once again, are both smartly recontextualized, with convoys being mostly the same, a group of enemies you have to deal with, but the main difference is that there are specific doors that need to be opened within a convoy. They need a key to be found. A key that can be found by a military zombie in the area. Kill him, loot his key card, and gain access to the stock in the back of the truck. Also, they don't spawn in more zombies after a random explosion, which is nice. Now, dark zones have a glow up in design philosophy as well. Each one has a unique interior and a specific set of resources that can be found, depending on which dark zone type it is. Dark zones were an interesting idea in Dying Light 2, especially since there are fewer infected inside of them at night, so it promoted actually engaging with the night in a meaningful way. However, that isn't the case in the Beast. It does make sense because it got rid of the infection meter from Dying Light 2, which, to be fair, it honestly felt like a gimmick to me anyways. It never became a risk to me, especially even in an early game, which is unfortunate, as it was a good idea. Even more unfortunate as nighttime is perhaps the best it's ever been. It is dark out. The volatiles will hunt in packs and they are faster, smarter, better than they were the last 2 games. Truly never thought I'd be scared by these guys after years of making them look like fools in Dying Light 2. But Techland did that, and that alone is something they should be proud of. Touching back onto the resources you get from Dark Zones, you'll need manual pages, which are essential to upgrading and crafting a variety of different things in the game, like weapons, tools, etc. But this is where the issue comes in. To upgrade an item, you need a blueprint and resources to do so, the same resources needed to craft an item. So whenever you upgrade a blueprint, you want to craft this newly upgraded item, there's a good chance you are short of what you need to in fact actually upgrade the item after you crafted it, which takes the excitement away from actually engaging with the crafting system. It's also worth noting there is very few dark zones to find. There's not many vendors to get access to said resources very easily, so you are forced to sticking and committing to maybe 1 or 2 weapons, which is a shame as the weapon variety is very nice in this game. It also hurts exploration somewhat, as when you unlock safe zones or find a location via a treasure map, you may find a cool item or blueprint that you may most likely not be able to engage with in an average playthrough, not unless you go out of your way and go around the map and grind to level up the blueprint, which makes upgrading weapons feel more like a chore. Now, it could just be due to the size of the open world. It is rather small, so I can see it being hard to balance systems as robust as this when the way you gather resources is through, within these smaller areas within the play space itself, which is already quite small. I praised Old Town earlier for its verticality, but the forest, industrial park, and suburban areas are still fresh to engage with. Trees actually present swing opportunities. You can climb up rock surfaces or wall run off of them. Within the suburban areas, there is power lines you can bounce on. In the forest areas, you can zip line between towers to get around more safely, especially at night, as using the car is even a risk during that time. Because even during the day, you have some things to manage with it. Gasoline is a resource you can acquire through gas stations or taking them out of other cars. And another important thing is being a good driver, as your car can take damage from being hit by zombies, running over them, or having one jump on it and break it. There is a lot to do within Castle Woods. I keep saying dense, but it is true, because it is also rather meaningful in content as well. Of course, I mentioned the side activities, but the side missions as well are really strong. There is one where you look for a father and find him in a volatile cave that you then have to go around and set explosives in. Or another one where you may just be helping provide power in the Old Town area and find a family in the sewers that shuts down the power in hopes of getting more people to come and help them escape. Just smart and interesting twists that allow us to better invest in this world, the apocalypse, and how it affects people. Dying Light 2, I think, didn't do enough of this. It really felt like that exploration in how zombies affect people in different ways was non-existent, and a lot of the quests dealt with rather basic things like helping a guy get cologne for a girl or helping an older woman get medication. It never really evolved much beyond such ideas. Maybe some things that push some sort of morality internally, which is interesting to see in the context of that game, but it isn't very deep, in my opinion. With Dying Light the Beast, every quest pretty much we see how the infection affected people in different ways, and the quests are better for it. These quests are really integral with making the game feel more engaging, because the story on its own by itself doesn't really take crazy steps to be more interesting. One half you are chasing leads on the Baron, trying to catch the Beast, the new golden boy at the Baron that allowed for Kyle to escape, and on the other half we are killing chimeras to get stronger and get new abilities. I keep sounding like a broken record, but Dying Light was never praised for strong narratives, and I never expected the Beast to have a gripping one, but I was always wanting something more out of it throughout my playthrough. And it was because of that I had a consistent desire of, playing it. The game will keep throwing these bones at you to keep you engaged. The half point of the story is a prime example. The leader of the survivors in Old Town betrayed Kyle to the Baron, and because of that betrayal, Kyle gets pissed and, she runs away, forcing another to step up and lead the Old Town survivors. This person, whose name is Jacob, tells us of another group, a group of human-infected hybrids living in the mountains, forced into exile by the sheriff. and the sheriff being the person that was the original leader before we kicked her out. Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble explaining things, but I'm sure you get it. This twist into an interesting plot thread is good to push me into the second act of the game, which is to try and find more ways to get info on the Baron and still kill more chimeras. Well, the Exiles are a very cool faction. The survivors of Old Town were kind of assholes, reeking of desperation. But the Exiles have notable desire of wanting to live, and because of that, their quest lines not only make these interesting twists I praised earlier, but also a strong emotional payoff. They play with the fact that the infection kind of operates on a telepathic basis, expand more on the ideas from the first game's DLC, and so these quest lines have things that are ruled with mystery and twists that I never expect, and those are some of the best quests in the game. More specifically, I want to touch on the emotional payoff more, as we actually get to have a chance to explore Kyle's psyche in a dedicated side quest. Even as someone who never fully resonated with Kyle's journey, being how they retold and expand on things from Dying Light 1 did leave a lasting impact on me. That quest alone, I recommend anyone to do to get the most out of this game. Because I do hate to sound like a broken record again, but the story barely pushes the envelope. It is with, side quests that I appreciate a lot, but, within the narrative itself, it does kill the momentum a lot of times. It has some good gameplay sections, like when we find a doctor who helps the Exiles leader, Lydia, become more powerful with her telepathic abilities, and can make the infected not see Kyle. And you have to go through this medical hospital and stealth past volatiles and other affected to get this new drug. That section is truly a masterful display of tension. There is this is a sick moment here and there, but there isn't anything in this game where I felt like things came together. Like when we arrived to the central loop for the first time in Dying Light 2. In this game, The Beast, when we have to save people of Old Town from bombs, I never really felt the emotional intensity of that situation. As well, we never really connected with the people in that group, and it felt like a tense situation with no meaningful substance behind it. In summary, the gameplay is good, story is not pushed, far enough, and Roger Craig Smith as Kyle Crane is still the best.
Now it's time to take down Daddy.
He just doesn't save it for me. Like moments in the story when side characters interact and certain conflicts are resolved. Like in this case with the sheriff and the exiles, once we save the people of Old Town from the Baron's men again, I don't feel much towards it. Not the same way as Dying Light 2 or even 1 to an extent. I understand Techland recognized the criticism that Dying Light 2 had with its focus on staying human, so they wanted to prove themselves with this game that they can make a zombie experience worth praising. Which is funny, as one of, if not the most powerful moment in the story for me is when we lure the beast so Lydia can control it and bring him back to being human. It starts off as a really simple driving section as you go through the outskirts of the map to try and lure it. Kyle Crane's main theme builds up as we are driving, and us as a player are anticipating this confrontation. Olivier Deriviere's score never misses. His work on Dying Light 2 is stellar, and I think no matter what you prefer, anyone can appreciate his work. He always has a deep understanding of what is needed from each track he delivers, and the energy of Kyle Crane himself is translated beautifully in this track. He's just really great at communicating things to the player with music. When Kyle knocks the beast out unconscious and you are directed to go back to the Exiles' hideout in the mountains, you hear a very familiar theme play, one that tells the players what they already know. Baden, is back, and what the fuck happened to you? The game doesn't slow down its pace here. Aiden explains a bit of who he is to everyone, and then we immediately get a call from the Baron as we have the beast, and he has Spike. We make a plan of attack and we rest, but Aiden just fucks it up and tries to save Spike himself, which I don't know why he thought that would work considering he gets punched every other cutscene in the second game. So we do a basic infiltration, but it actually comes together rather nicely as we get to see the survivors and the exiles work together in a dedicated set piece. Cool combat and boss encounters that really pushes the player. We find Aiden and Olivia betrays us, which is the next logical way for the story to go. And the game brings us to our Last Supper, an 8-minute cutscene, which I feel is one of, if not the longest cutscenes in the series. And is especially bold for a game that I felt relied on being so quick to get to the action. Well, this is the breathing room I believe the game desperately needed to get its interesting ideas across. And this scene with the Baron does exactly that. And we have the good old exposition dump. Kyle had been experimented on for years, yet he lost his will to live. He's becoming weak. So the Baron gave him the one thing he desired, revenge, by letting him escape. Taking all the blood from different chimeras for Olivia to eventually hand to the Baron, so he can make the perfect specimen. And we unfortunately don't get much exploration of the Baron, or aka Marcus Fisher beyond some lore documents that can be found, which is unfortunate, as the game plays with rather mystic ideas that relates back to the Baron's bloodline. When they did the trailers for him months ago, he reminded me a bit of a Resident Evil villain, and I was excited to see that translate in the world established by Dying Light. Also, his voice actor sounded cooler in that trailer. And it's a shame the Baron may not have lived up to the heights I had hoped, but with the exposition dump reveal of his plans, it definitely recontextualizes and enhances everything we've done to get stronger throughout the game. So it works here. To have something to reflect upon as we... Oh dear God. The Baron is starting to clear off everyone from the table. It's a brutal, gory sight to witness, and one that solidifies that he is in fact going to die. After seeing the death that the Baron was bringing to everyone else, Olivia, with the help of Lydia, breaks us out and we give chase to the Baron. The final boss just throws everything the game has all at once, between fighting both infected and humans with Aiden, eventually getting those infected weak enough to be controlled by Lydia from afar, allowing us to properly focus on the Baron. Lydia does get overwhelmed by soldiers, forcing Aiden to go and help her while we go mano a mano with the Baron. Given the fact he's a bitch, he goes ahead and uses the fancy blood he stole from us and makes him to quite the abomination. Where in this new form of infected, he is very fast and agile, yet he uses a lot of ground pounds and combos. We get a hype and aura moment, which, hey, I'm not complaining. I can acknowledge when something is cool, and yeah, no, that is really cool.
I told you I'd kill you.
We kill the Baron, and we get us set up for the future of the franchise, a tease for more Dying Light games, and the idea of more stories with Kyle and Aiden, which is something I expected, given Timon Spectala couldn't contain his excitement when discussing that idea in press. On its own, I can see why people would feel disappointed with the game ending like that, but however, if I look back on the game through a collective experience, through its side content, the presentation, the involvement of his ideas, it's all very impressive considering what it started as, a DLC for Dying Light 2. It's put together very well and proves to everyone that Techland can still make magical moments of exploration, fear, and parkour that many players loved from the first Dying Light 1 a decade ago. One I have grown to appreciate more as I made this video, which I think speaks volumes how Techland proved themselves with Dying Light the Beast.